By 1870 at Brighton in Sussex, comfortably off spinster Christina Edmonds had fallen in love with local physician Dr. Charles Beard, a married man. She'd written him numerous love letters, but the doctor didn't reciprocate and showed the letters to his wife, asking her what to do. After some discussion, it was decided to ignore them. Christina, however, wasn't going to give up so easily. She had to get rid of her rival. In September that year, she gifted a box of chocolate creams to Mrs. Beard, and after she'd eaten them, she fell ill, although did go on to make a full recovery. Dr. Beard accused Christina of trying to poison his wife, but he had little evidence to back up his accusations, so didn't report the incident to the police. Upset at the loss of her love, the petite Christina thought up a new plan. If someone else in Brighton became ill in the same way, then suspicion would be directed elsewhere. On 18th March 1871, Christina purchased 10 grains of strychnine from chemist and druggist Isaac Garrett, telling him she needed to kill some stray cats, and ignoring his objections that it was cruel. Telling him she was a married woman, and that only she and her husband would be using it, the chemist told her she needed a witness to countersign for it, so Mrs. Stone, a milliner, witnessed the purchase. Christina signed the register as Mrs. Wood, and on 15th April and 10th May, purchased further quantities of strychnine, telling Garrett during her May purchase the couple had an elderly dog that wouldn't make the move to Devon, so was to be put down. From confectioner John Maynard, whose shop was on West Street in Brighton, she bought several quantities of chocolate creams by asking boys to go into the shop to get them for her, but then getting them to exchange the chocolates for different ones later. The unsuspecting shopkeeper obliged, not thinking the exchanged chocolates had been tampered with. Soon, people all over Brighton began to fall ill, having eaten chocolates from Maynard's shop. Even Christina complained to him that a friend had fallen ill having consumed some. Holidaymaker Charles Miller purchased some chocolate creams from Maynard's on 12th June 1871, sharing them with others. Most tasted fine, but in the afternoon, his brother Ernest and his nephew, 4-year-old Sidney Albert Barker, thought they tasted strange. Ernest said it had a coppery taste, with the young boy saying he didn't like it and that it tasted nasty. Miller himself fell unwell soon after eating one. He felt dizzy and his arms and legs began to feel stiff, but he recovered. Young Sidney also began to show the same symptoms, so Dr. Richard Rugg was called in. He arrived a few minutes later and found the boy violently convulsing. The doctor administered an emetic to make him sick, but before it had the chance to work, the youngster was dead. The next day, the doctor carried out a post-mortem, but could find no reason for his death except changes to his brain associated with fits, and the only strange factor was that he was unusually rigid. David Black, the Brighton coroner, wasn't happy, so asked for the contents of the boy's stomach to be sent to Professor Lethby. He found 1/4 grain of strychnine in the contents. He also tested the chocolate creams Miller had bought and found the poison in them, therefore concluding the boy had been poisoned as a result of consuming the chocolates. At the inquest into Sidney's death, Christina gave evidence, telling the jury she and her friend had become ill after eating chocolates from Maynard's. She went on that she'd taken them to Mr. Schweitzer, another local chemist, to have them analysed, and said that she'd given his report to Dr. Rugg. The jury recorded accidental death on Sydney, as they couldn't apportion blame to anyone specific, although advised Mr. Ware, who manufactured the chocolates, to look at his processes. Ware was surprised, as he'd never had any complaints from anywhere else and never kept strychnine on his premises. Over the coming weeks, Sydney's father, Albert Barker, received 3 very similar letters, purporting to be from different people, stating that action should be taken against Maynard. The local poisonings continued, however. More people fell ill after consuming chocolate creams, and several residents, including Mrs. Beard, received parcels containing fruit or cake, which also made them ill after consuming it. Some of them took the leftovers to chemists in the town to have them analysed. Samples were forwarded to Professor Rogers, who found in each case the items were heavily laced with arsenic. On 8th June, an errand boy arrived at Garrett's with a note allegedly from Glaser and Kemp, another chemist's, asking for half an ounce of strychnia, but they only had a drachm. The boy returned, saying that would tide them over. The youngster paid the 2 shillings and 6pence and was handed the poison and his change. The following month, Garrett received another note from a different errand boy, asking to see the poisons register, allegedly from David Black, the coroner, who would return it immediately. Thinking nothing of it, he did as asked, and the book was duly returned quickly. However, when he next went to use it, some pages had been torn out. On 19th July, Garrett received another request from Glaser and Kemp, but this time checked with them, and they told him they'd never asked him for strychnia. 2 days later, another chemist, Samuel Bradbury, received a note allegedly from Glaser and Kemp for 3 ounces of arsenic. Police investigations had already begun into the poisoning, and the 3 letters sent to Mr. Barker, the notes to the chemists, and the signature in the poisons register, which had not been removed when she'd signed it to Mrs. Wood, were all analysed by a handwriting expert, Mr. Nethercliffe, who concluded all had been written by the same person. They had also sent a note to Christina Edmonds, following her interview with them, and the return note was compared to all the others. The handwriting was unmistakably hers. She was arrested and charged with indiscriminate poisoning, the attempted murder of Mrs. Beard, and the murder of young Sydney Barker. The 42-year-old appeared before magistrates in September. Then her trial began on Monday 15th January 1872 at the Old Bailey in London, lasting 2 days. Defended by Mr. Sergeant Parry, Mr. Poland and Mr. Worsley, the now 43-year-old sat during the proceedings, dressed neatly, wearing dark gloves, and flanked by 2 prison warders. She pleaded not guilty. Sergeant Parry told the court she had indeed purchased enough poison to kill between 60 and 70 people, and that she'd bought the chocolate creams and had them returned to Maynard's shop after she'd tampered with them. But he did question her responsibility in the death of Sydney, as she hadn't known him at all. He also pointed out the chocolates, which were kept in a jar, would have been replenished, and asked how Sydney could possibly have been poisoned by her sweets, therefore was innocent of his murder. He also claimed Christina had impaired intellect, citing her family members who had mental illnesses. The prosecution case, led by Sergeant Ballantyne, assisted by Mr. Straight, pointed out the lengths she had gone to prove to Dr. Beard she hadn't tried to poison his wife. She had given children poisoned sweets and had torn pages from the poisons register and had written incriminating letters. Evidence was also presented to the court that doctors had examined her while she was held at Newgate Jail, and while they agreed insanity was hereditary, in Christina's case, some found she was bordering on criminality and insanity, while others said she was insane. All did agree, however, that she didn't appreciate the seriousness of her situation. After the judge's summing up, the jury retired to consider their verdict. That verdict came back as guilty. The judge, Sir Samuel Martin, Baron Martin, then proceeded to place the black cap on his head and sentenced her to death. As was custom for female prisoners, she was asked if there was any reason why the sentence shouldn't be carried out, and if she was pregnant. She said quietly, "I am." With the assistance of prison matrons, the prison doctor, Mr. Gibson, and another doctor, Dr. Jai Beresford Riley, who was simply watching the proceedings, it was soon ascertained she wasn't pregnant. She was removed from Newgate Jail to Lewes Jail to await her execution. However, 10 days later, her death sentence was commuted. Christina was found to be insane after all, and was committed to the Broadmoor Criminal Lunatic Asylum, where she died in September 1907, just weeks shy of her 79th birthday.